My name is Dara, short for Dorothea. I was named after my great aunt, though. I didn't know much about her until one fateful day. As I walked through the busy mall with my friend, suddenly the lights flickered. The building began shaking. My friend and I looked at each other, terrified, when over the intercom came a loud voice. Attention, all patrons! Please seek shelter inside of a bathroom or hallway without windows. Walk fast, but calm. Instantly, I knew what it was. Kansas has always been known for its tornadoes, being directly in the path of Tornado Alley. I grabbed my friend's hand and ran for the restrooms, but everyone else was doing the same. Then, it was too late. Dara! My friend screamed as I got ripped from her grasp in a gust of wind. The sound of a train thundered around us as I rose up into the air. My friend was still holding onto a pole, looking up at me in horror as I flew higher. I looked up to see the ceiling of the mall being ripped away. That was the last thing I remembered. When I woke up much later, I was back at home, in my bed. The only thing was, my bedroom looked different. Instead of my pink painted walls, there was striped wallpaper on my walls. Instead of my big screen TV on the wall, there was a huge antique mirror. My dressers looked the same, only they no longer had white paint covering them. I stood up fast, realizing I now wore a nightgown, which I had never seen before. Slowly, I crept toward the mirror, afraid of what I might see staring back at me. To my relief, I looked mostly the same, with just a few minor differences. My hair was long and braided into two, instead of the usual short, layered haircut I'd been used to. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice yelled from downstairs. Dorothea, dinner time, the female voice yelled. Dorothea? I said to myself. Nobody calls me by my full name. The voice called again, this time from the stairs. Dorothea, are you awake? Yes, I replied, shakily walking toward the stairs. Yes? Don't you mean yes, ma'am? The woman, who I could now see, was an older woman with gray hair and a bun, said. Yes, ma'am, I replied. Then, she looked up the stairs, laying eyes on me for the first time. Dorothea, why are you still in your nightgown? Do you know your cousin and uncle had to milk the cows for you today? I swallowed, thinking to myself, milk the cows? Are you ill, my child? The woman asked, hands on her hips with a tea towel. Yes, ma'am. I don't feel good, I sputtered. It's feel well, Dorothea. My goodness, you talk like a hick. Now go lay back down. I'll whip you up some soup. I quickly did as she said, scared to find any other odd changes. When the woman came back up with soup and a thermometer, moments later, I took the opportunity to ask her some questions. Mom, I asked. She looked back at me strangely. Are you okay, child? I am your auntie, not your mother. Embarrassed, I started over. Auntie, what year is it? She looked at me strangely again, felt my cheek and forehead for fever, then responded. 1945. What did you think? I struggled to keep my jaw from hanging open in shock. 1945, I sputtered. That's when I noticed how hot it was in my room. Beads of sweat dripped from my forehead as I searched my room for the AC vents that typically sat just above my baseboards. There were none. One boxed fan sat in a nearby window, only pushing hot air. Dorothea, you're burning up, my child, Auntie said. She left the room for just a moment, coming back in with a dampened rag. She laid the rag on my forehead. It helped to cool me off surprisingly more than I thought it would. After that, I drifted back to sleep. Awoke the next day, still in the same nightgown, and still in my 1945-style bedroom. I yawned, sat up, placed my feet on the cold wooden floor, where my carpet used to be, and walked over to the wardrobe. Upon opening my wardrobe, I found a bunch of 1940s-style clothing for a girl, my size. So, reluctantly, I put one of the outfits on. As I stared at myself in the mirror, with my hair still braided in two, I couldn't believe how much I looked like an old picture I had seen of my great aunt. The one I'm named after. Dorothea, breakfast time, called Auntie from downstairs. Yes, ma'am, I shouted back, before nervously tiptoeing down the old wooden stairs, which was the same exact staircase that I was used to, though the runner down the middle was different. Once I landed on the last step, I gasped looking around. Instead of my usual living room TV, an old antique radio sat. The furniture was like what I had once seen in an antique magazine, and the floors were all wooden, with giant oval rugs in the middle. I turned to enter the dining room, where Auntie Emma, as I heard her being called, was sitting at the head of the table. Next to her, a man called Uncle Harry, who was Auntie Emma's husband, and a young farmhand guy they called Hank sat across from Uncle Harry. I took the only seat left, across from Auntie Emma. In front of me was a dish full of scrambled eggs, toast, grits, and scrapple. My stomach turned. Go on and eat up, Dorothea. It's your favorite. And the cows are waiting on you, Auntie Emma said. Hank, who was quite handsome, dressed in 1940s wear, smiled at me, in between bites. Does he like me? I thought to myself. Uncle Harry stayed mostly silent, grunting as he chowed down on his breakfast. While reading a newspaper, after breakfast, Hank took me out to the barn. It was a massive barn, filled with hay and cows. After putting on overalls, I followed Hank to the first gate, with a huge cow inside. Welp, she looks about ready to give birth any day now, Hank said, throwing his cowboy hat on. It was scorching hot out, and the only thing semi-helping combat the heat was a large fan up high in the window of the barn. I'll let you be, Hank said, tilting his cowboy hat. I grabbed his arm without thinking, exclaiming, Wow, wait, but I don't know how to milk a cow. Auntie Emma said you were sick yesterday. Did it affect your memory? I sheepishly grinned, realizing I was still holding onto his arm. I let go, saying, Could you just show me once more? Please? That would be so cool of you. Cool, Hank responded, looking confused still. Then I recalled I was in the 1940s. The word cool hadn't been invented yet. I just mean, I would really like if you would show me, I said in a flirty manner. Hank looked confused and honored all at once. Then he proceeded to show me how to milk the cow. It was more exciting than I thought it would be. And I also started to enjoy having Hank surround me with his muscular body, with his hands on mine, showing me how to milk into an old tin bucket. It seemed like hours had passed by, when Uncle Harry called Hank over to help him with something else that needed attention. As I sat milking the cow by myself, almost filling the second bucket. But suddenly the cow began moving and kicking, as if I hurt her. I backed up, letting a yelp out. Uncle Harry and Hank came running over to me. She's contracting. Stay here, Hank, while I go grab some blankets, Uncle Harry commanded. Contracting? I asked. She's about to give birth, Hank said, a boyish grin on his handsome face. Quick, help me see if I can see the calf. Nervously, I stood behind the cow, waiting for instructions from Hank. Then I watched as Hank stuck his bare hand inside of the cow. I winced in disgust at first, before Hank instructed me to do the same. Here it comes. Be ready, Hank instructed. Then something beautiful happened. Hank and I both caught the newborn calf in our arms. Though it and we were all covered in blood, it was a sight to be had. Uncle Harry came running with a bunch of blankets and wrapped the little calf up. Afterward, Henry and I went to the hand pump to wash off. Several times our hands accidentally touched, and each time felt like a bolt of lightning. By the end of that day, I was into Henry. After bathing and getting ready for bed at quite an early time, I waited for Auntie Emma and Uncle Harry's bedroom light to go out. Then, I tiptoed down the hallway to Henry's room. Henry seemed shocked and timid when I climbed into his bed. I was used to quite the opposite reaction from boys in my regular life. Then I recalled hearing about how times were different back then, in the 1940s. Girls weren't as forward back then. But Henry soon got past his timidness once we began making out. Before we could go any further, though, Henry stopped me. Like a gentleman, he said, I really like you, Dorothea. So, I don't want to go too far until we're married. I swallowed in shock. Did he just propose to me? I thought to myself. Reluctantly, I tiptoed back to my bedroom. As I laid in the humidity of the farmhouse, I began thinking of what-ifs. What if I did marry Henry? What if this is a second chance for me? What if I like this life better? Eventually, I fell asleep thinking of all my what-ifs. When I awoke again, I was still in my bedroom, only it looked different than the last. I was eager to talk to Hank again, to know if he really meant what he said the previous night. However, as soon as my feet hit the floor, I knew I was somewhere completely different. Instead of a nightgown, I was wearing silver and white checkered dress that I had never seen before. The dress went to my knees, flaring out at my hips. It was a jumper, and underneath the top was a white long-sleeved blouse. My hair was French braided into two sides, halfway down, and tiptoed toward the mirror. It was still me in the face, but as I looked around, I realized my bedroom looked futuristic. The floors, though wooden, felt almost squishy underneath my bare feet. My walls, though no longer covered in old wallpaper, now seemed to be made out of gym mat material. And instead of the usual rectangular windows I was used to, now there were two bubbled-out windows in a dome shape. I hastily made my way to the stairs, but instead, there was some type of escalator. I nervously stepped on the first metal step, and to my surprise, it began taking me downward. Once I reached the bottom, I saw crazy-shaped futuristic furniture instead of my usual living room setup, The dining room had a metal table and chairs instead of wooden. I quickly opened the front door, only to find there was no longer a barn as I'd been used to. Instead, there was a massive green landscape, with perfectly manicured trees and bushes lined up on either side of a golden brick path. I stepped forward, unsure if I would find Hank, Auntie Emma, and Uncle Harry outside, but I was hopeful. Still, the golden brick path seemed to go on forever, and to where, I wasn't sure. Hesitantly, I continued forward. I walked in between tall bushes and thick trees, following the golden brick path until it came to a cross-section. Only the bricks going the opposite directions were silver. I was contemplating which way to go, when suddenly, a bunch of robotic characters, much like the Seven Dwarfs, came rolling toward me from one of the silver paths. The robot dwarfs began singing. Follow the golden brick path, the silver path brings only negativity and wrath, as they began circling around me 3 times. Then, they departed down the golden path I'd just come from, as fast as they'd came. I continued forward, hesitantly, as the bushes and trees grew smaller. Eventually, I came to an opening. I was in the middle of a green pasture, and up ahead I could see a castle of sorts. Suddenly, I could see 4 figures coming from beyond a hill to my right. As they came closer, I saw that they were wearing costumes. One was dressed in a lion costume, and I could see through the mesh opening in the eyes that it looked like Uncle Harry. The other, a woman, was dressed as a tree. I could tell that it was Auntie Emma. Beside her, Henry was dressed in a Tin Man costume. In his hand was a leash with my dog, Bobo, at the end of the leash. Lastly was who I assumed to be Cousin Luke, dressed in a scarecrow costume. Cousin Luke was the one who Auntie Emma said filled in for me to milk the cows while I was sick. As they approached me, I began laughing hysterically. Why is everybody dressed up? I shouted. Is it Halloween? And where are we? My voice seemed to echo, as if I were in a giant glass dome. Strangely, though, Aunt Emma and the gang didn't respond right away. They looked at me as if I was a stranger to them. Auntie Emma, Hank, Uncle Harry, you don't remember me from yesterday? I asked. They looked at each other as if the answer was no. Do you at least talk? Any of you? I questioned, this time on the verge of tears. Hank, in his Tin Man costume, stepped forward, while Uncle Harry, in his lion costume, hid behind Auntie Emma, in her tree costume. Cousin Luke, in his scarecrow costume, studied me like a threat. Hank circled around me, then finally spoke. Are you going to the castle of the Good Witch, like us? Hank asked me. Bobo started barking just then, excitedly trying to jump up to me. You remember me, boy! I exclaimed, picking him up with relief. After snuggling with Bobo for a few seconds, eventually put him down, as Hank still had a hold of the leash. If Bobo knows her, then she must be okay, Hank said to the rest. They nodded simultaneously. Well, we haven't much time. Come along then, Auntie Emma said, taking the lead down the golden brick path. That went on forever, going up and down grassy hills. The castle, though I could see it from where we stood, seemed far, far away. About halfway to the castle, suddenly a giant bird with the face of a wicked witch came down from the sky to attack us. Following that, a bunch of monkeys with wings also came flying down like missiles, attacking each one of us, while Uncle Harry, in his lion costume, ran ahead scared, with Auntie Emma, the tree, following close behind him, Cousin Luke, the scarecrow, Henry, the Tin Man, and I all stood our ground, swatting at the flying monkeys with our hands. Eventually, they seemed to get the message and flew off. Panting, I asked, what was that? Henry shrugged his shoulders. Some type of attack animals, I guess. Well, we better catch up to the other two, Cousin Luke said, running after Auntie Emma and Uncle Harry. With just Henry and I walking side by side, with Bobo still on his leash in front of us, I began questioning Henry again. Henry, I don't know where I am or how I got here, but I really do like you. Do you remember us making out last night at all? Henry looked at me underneath his Tin Man hat, then smiled. I'm sorry, I don't remember, but just picturing it makes me feel warm inside. I smiled back. It was good enough for me. Soon enough, the 5 of us, along with Bobo, reached the front doors of the massive castle. Surprisingly, the doors opened for us. Inside, it looked like a futuristic setting. The living room was a large open space, with very big boulders sporadically placed throughout. Off to the right was an open kitchen, very futuristic looking as well. What are we looking for? I whispered. Hank whispered back. The wizard. He lives here, and he grants wishes. Instantly, I thought about my wish to go home. Yesterday, I was too enthused by Hank to worry about getting home. But now I missed home. This was becoming much too strange for me, though I would still greatly miss Hank, Auntie Emma too, even Uncle Harry, Cousin Luke too. Since he helped Henry and I fight off those flying monkeys, I had come to respect him as well. But it was time to go home. Suddenly, a scary man's voice came over the loudspeaker. "One of you has a wish for me." It is the girl in the checkered dress. But the answer is no. I looked at Hank and the gang with dread. Did he say no? Auntie Emma, in her tree costume, stepped forward. "But Great Wizard, we are only here to help Dorothea on her path home. And we have come a long way," Cousin Luke said. Suddenly, Bobo yanked his leash from Hank's hand and ran to jump over the kitchen island. After growling and barking, he finally came out from behind the counter, dragging a woman by her collar. The woman looked like my mother, a thin, pale woman in her 50s. Only this version of my mother wore a wicked witch nose and hat. "Are you the one speaking over the loudspeaker?" Hank questioned her as she was still being dragged by Bobo. "Quick, throw water on her!" Uncle Harry yelled. Auntie Emma did as he commanded, splashing my witch mother with a glass of water. And we all watched as the witch melted into a puddle of water. After Bobo calmed down from barking and growling, I slumped to the floor in defeat. I guess that was my only chance at ever getting home. I cried. Hank comforted me as the others stood around gloomily. Then a bright light flashed, and suddenly, a good witch, who looked like my stepmother, Linda, but dressed in a fairy godmother costume, appeared in front of us. "Darling Dara, don't cry, sweetheart," the voice of my stepmother said. I looked at her, pleading with my eyes as to a way out. Linda stooped to eye level with me, a wand in her hand. She said, "Tap your crocs 3 times, and you will be in a hot air balloon on your way home." I looked at Auntie Emma in her tree costume, then Uncle Harry in his lion costume, Cousin Luke in his scarecrow costume, then at Henry in his Tin Man costume. "I will miss you all," I said, a tear falling from my cheek. They all nodded, sad. Then Henry kissed me. It was beautiful. As he kissed me, I tapped my crocs 3 times. Suddenly, I was in a hot air balloon with my stepmother, in her fairy godmother costume, as we flew over the land of Oz. At some point, I fell asleep. The next time I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Surrounding me was my family, my father, my stepmother, and my siblings. They told me I had been in a coma since the tornado hit our local mall, with my friend and I in it. My friend came to see me too. She had been one of the few lucky people who made it out of the mall in one piece. She told me how she saw me flying up out of the mall, through the torn-off roof. Though I had been knocked out by flying debris, I somehow landed safely in a tree. They said it was a miracle I survived. My mother, who had done nothing but try to ruin mine and my father's lives, had also been at the mall during the tornado. Unfortunately, she didn't make it out. Then, about a day after I'd woken up, one of the nurses I hadn't seen yet arrived on shift. It was a young man in his late teens who was training to be an RN. When he first came in, he had a surgical mask on. When he first approached me, he began taking the lead under close supervision. After checking me over, I finally noticed his name tag. It said Justin Henry. His voice sounded familiar too, but it wasn't until he took his mask off that I finally noticed him. It was Henry, from my dream. He was even more handsome in modern-day nurse clothing. As the days went on, Justin and I began talking more and more. When I finally was released from the hospital, I had his number and he had mine. Eventually, Justin Henry and I would marry and have 7 kids. But before all of that, as I was looking through family pictures from my dad's side, one day I came across one with my great-aunt Dorothea in it. She looked just like me. Beside her was her Auntie Emma, Uncle Harry, Cousin Luke, and a farmhand named Henry, whom she later married. Our property had been devastated by a tornado just days after that picture was taken, but luckily it only went through the barn. Those poor cows. But in the end, everything worked out. We lived happily ever after.